Hey y'all, we're Dustin and Danielle, a brother and sister certified financial planner professional duo at Toujours Planning. We're here to share what you need to know about money, wealth, and investing so you can start paving your own path to financial freedom and independence today. So far in this crisis, we have covered 3 things that you need to do in your business right now during this crisis. And we've also covered what the heck is going on in the stock market. And today we're going to cover probably the most important thing to keep in mind during a crisis. Dustin, you went through the financial crisis. I wasn't yet in the industry back in 2008, 9, and 10. And I know that you learned a ton. So why don't you speak to us a little bit about that experience and what you learned was the most important thing going through that?
The 2008 financial crisis was the most challenging time of my life. And now looking back, it led to the man I am right now. It led to the career I have right now, and also just all of the information I can pass on to everybody. So I'm very thankful for it. But it was very tough. And at that time in 2008, I was about 4 years into the business. And I just had a complete different worldview, especially when it came to the financial system. And then seeing things unravel the way that they did in such a fast time, and then in slow motion just seeing how things with Congress and the Federal Reserve and how the market reacted to the news, and how bad everything did get with people's investments, because at the time I was helping all of our clients with their life savings, and helping everybody walk through this and make sense of it. So at that time, I learned the right things to do in a crisis and also the wrong things, because I did study a lot about the past and past financial crises, because I was just looking for so much information. I read and studied a lot about the Great Depression and other financial catastrophes. So I think I do have a pretty good grasp about what we can do in today's crisis.
Okay, so let's hear it. I'm all ears. What is the most important thing that people need to keep in mind during a crisis, and then potentially even keep in mind for the future for any other crises that may come along?
Yeah, it's important to remember that the root cause of any economic or financial crisis is what we call liquidity, which is access to cash and convertibility to cash. So if you have things that you own, getting cash out of them. There's obviously some things that we have that are very liquid, things like your savings, and your investments are relatively liquid too. Most of your, if you have public investments, stocks and bonds, because you can sell them pretty quick. But most people, most of their assets that they own is maybe in their house, which it's not easy to get money out of that. If you own a business, you can't exactly get money out of your business or sell your business. And a lot of people own real estate. And real estate is very hard to convert to cash, in your vehicles, other things like that. But my point about liquidity is, in a financial crisis, cash is a big issue because it creates a domino effect in getting exponentially bad really quick. So what usually happens is, it starts out with workers start losing their jobs, okay? And that starts to accelerate pretty quickly, because whenever people lose their jobs, well, they're not going to be spending as much money, obviously. So it hurts businesses. They can't pay their bills, which hurts utility companies. And that kind of sets off the dominoes, because businesses can't pay their bills. So what people try to do is, then they start using up all of their savings for what they do have. They try to run up a lot of debt. And then the banks start saying, well, everybody's trying to get money out of us. They're taking all of their savings out. They're getting all the credit. We have to stop all this before it hurts us. And then banks' credit starts to seize up. And then all of that creates, which in the past was like a run on the banks. Everybody would run to the bank to hurry up and get their money out before everybody else did. And it was a self-fulfilling prophecy to a financial collapse.
Which is why the FDIC now has in place some protections of kind of like guaranteed amounts of money that they can always draw to prevent those runs on the bank.
Right. So that all helps, having those regulations in place. We learned a lot from the Great Depression, and we used a lot of those weapons in the financial crisis, and we're starting to use more in this current crisis. And we have another podcast and video we're going to do on stimulus measures, but there's ways to battle it. Now, we don't know how bad this can get, but I want to prepare everybody for the worst anyway, because there are some things that you can do to help your liquidity situation.
Okay, so let's go through some of the things that people who are listening, no matter what your situation, that they can start doing right now. And let's start by getting into some of the stimulus measures that we've been hearing about. What can people take advantage of right now?
Without getting into too much detail on all the stimulus measures, there's a few of them that everybody needs to try to take advantage of. Number one is the Paycheck Protection Program, which was just released. And basically, if you own any type of business, if you're self employed or a contract worker or a gig worker, you can apply to get things like payroll, utilities, rent, mortgage, all of that paid for under this program for, I think, is like 8 weeks or 2.5 months, something like that. And it looks like it's going to be forgiven. If it meets certain requirements, the federal government is actually going to give you that money. And as long as you keep everybody on the payroll, that's why they call it the Paycheck Protection Program. So that's number one. The Small Business Association has the emergency disaster loan for the coronavirus. So you can apply to get a low interest loan from the federal government. Take advantage of that too. Get both. Just apply for all of these. That gives you liquidity backed by the full faith and credit of the government. And I noticed today Louisiana has a state loan program too. That's kind of like the federal loan program, and it's got a low interest rate of 3.5% capped. You can't find this that many places. And another stimulus measure is most people, depending on your income level, are going to get individual payments too. Try to save a lot of that money and don't spend it as much. I would use this credit and put things on it. Try to hold on to your savings and use these loan programs to put some of your bills on it.
Yeah, and the last thing that people can do is put a pause on their student loan payments.
That was in the stimulus measure too.
So Dustin, how about we add links to this for anyone's watching? We'll add links below in the video that you can go and apply for some of these loans. And obviously, if you're not in Louisiana, maybe your state has their own loan programs. So definitely go and Google that and see what's available to you in your state.
And number two is to establish more credit lines if you can. So a lot of this is counterintuitive. A lot of people think, well, we're in crisis. I need to pay down my debt. Well, that's not true in a crisis. You want to use your debt to the most extent because, in a way, by using your debt for a lot of your bills and things like that, you're making the banks and the federal government pay the bills. You're not losing any money because you're holding onto your savings here on the other end, on the other side of the ledger. Okay, so you're just delaying it while we're in crisis mode. So it's okay to use these low interest credit lines for the time being because you don't know how bad things could get. If it gets really bad, and I don't think it will, but if we ever came to the economy on the verge of collapse, you're going to need more of that cash. The money that you do have with banks and things like that, that's their problem in a way. So open more credit lines if you can, in addition to those disaster loans, because you may need it after the fact. It's always good to protect your business and protect yourself.
Yeah, and a lot of this may sound counterintuitive because we're told not to do these things. We're told, debt is bad and hurry up and pay it off. But in times of crises, the rules change for sure. So I'll go into the third thing that you can do is don't overpay your debt. He kind of just spoke to that a little bit, but now is not the time to hurry up and pay down that debt. Like he said, you may need to rely more on that debt access through those loans, and you just need to have that liquidity, that cash on hand, because again, we don't know how long this is going to last. And you just kind of want to reach out to all the resources that are given to you right now. The last thing you want to try and touch is the current cash and liquidity you have right now. That's the name of the game.
Yes, so let me add something to that. If you really can't stand debt, that's fine, but you can tackle that after the fact when the coast is clear. You can pay down all the debt you want and get rid of it all you want. If you've listened to our podcast much, we're not all about that. If you have low interest rates, we're not about trying to hurry and pay down your debt, but if it really drives you crazy, you can do that later.
And the last thing we can do is reach out to all of your debt companies that you are currently in debt with and pause your bills if possible. You can request a pause, and a lot of times these companies will allow that. And for the most part, it's going to extend your loan but you can start up again at any time. I know Dustin and I have both reached out to our mortgage companies just as a just in case. And a lot of times they'll give you some different options. If you're not finding what you need on the website, call and find out what the options are. And then you also want to consider possibly cutting back your contributions to things like your 401k or any type of savings plan that you have. I would say only cut it if you really need to, if you need that extra cash flow on hand, because these investments obviously are there to help you in the long run. But if you really need that cash, again, this is the most important thing, the liquidity, then that is another option that is there for you to cut back those contributions.
Yeah, if you notice, all four of these is really about protecting what you do have so you can weather any storm.
All right, so you've got your list of things that you can do to help yourself out right now, and also keep all of these in mind for the future, for future crises. If liquidity is the most important thing, you need to make sure in the future that your emergency savings are set up to support you through a crisis. And we'll go ahead and link everything in the notes below on this video. And if you like what you just saw, subscribe to this channel and then head over to chooseyourplanning.com to listen to episodes of our podcast, Wealth by Design, and download our free wealth blueprint. And that's TOUJOURS planning.com. We'll see you next week.